Maybe you've never really drawn trees because they seem too overwhelming with so many small details. Or maybe you have attempted trees, but you've just never been satisfied with the results. In this art tutorial, we're going to start with a 3-step exercise that will get you comfortable with the basics. From there, I'll show you how to draw almost any type of evergreen with just the smallest adjustments to this 3-step process. Let's begin by drawing a trunk and the main branches, horizontal lines, starting out smaller at the top and becoming longer as we work our way down. Stagger them slightly as we don't want every branch directly across from one another. In step 2, we'll add offshoots, some facing upward, some downward, all moving in an outward direction away from the trunk. For step 3, we need to add all those little leaves. Making small dashes, work your way around each individual limb. Don't worry too much about the look of your tree at this stage. This is only our trial run to get the basics down. Turn your paper if needed and practice with varying lengths. Did you know there are dozens of varieties of evergreen trees? They're found on nearly every continent, though most varieties prefer a colder climate. Those green spikes that we often refer to as needles are technically the tree's leaves. Once you've finished, you'll likely notice some bare spots. Add small offshoots and branches wherever you like. This is my favorite part. Don't be afraid to let some branches and leaves overlap one another. This will help your tree look more natural. As we wrap up our warm-up exercise, hopefully you're feeling pretty good about the basic structure of a tree. Your hand should be getting used to the dash motion needed to create your leaves. Now, let's put those steps into action using a real tree as our guide. Take a look at the pine tree in the bottom left corner picture. Notice how the branches angle upwards. Using those same 3 steps, create branches and limbs that reach towards the sky. In this next example, look at the spruce in the top right photo. These branches are upturned at the ends, with leaves that are more curved than straight. Keep that in mind when making your dashes. In the top left, we have the Italian cypress. See how the bottom is shaped like a half circle and the branches almost hug the trunk. This tree doesn't appear to have any downward-facing limbs. In the center picture, we see the giant sequoia. The trunk is thicker than the others, and the branches begin much higher up, exposing more of the base. For this last example, let's look at the fir tree in the bottom right. The branches are nearly horizontal, very similar to the tree we drew in our practice exercise. Notice how full and lush the tree is. Let's look again at the upward structure that we used for the pine tree. It truly is amazing how many different trees can be drawn, starting with just some basic bones. See how leaving the limbs bare can make it look like a tree in the midst of a harsh winter? Once you're comfortable, try working with thick pens as well as fine tip pens to see what looks you can create. Fine tips allow for more detail, while a thicker tip allows your leaves to blend together in a very natural way. You might also try to cluster your branches, or add limbs all the way to the ground. Or perhaps you'll play around with other shapes for your leaves. Here, I've used metallic Sharpies to liven up some of my sketches. And on this tree, I've added pine cones. For my forest here, I decided to splash on some color with my watercolor paints. After adhering it to a piece of cardstock, I've stitched a quick border around with my sewing machine. I'd love to hear in the comments what types of trees you're working on now that you know the 3 simple steps. I hope you'll join me next week when we dive into a fun take on mushroom art.